Well, for 5 points, Mark,
yes.
Welcome to the show, by the way. I'm welcoming you to your own show, but,
yes.
I host, contributor, and so on. You get 5 points if you can guess which medieval job is currently being undertaken in my house.
Medieval job?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using the term loosely.
Have you put child 3 in the stocks and have you paid someone to throw apples at him?
No.
Okay. Is it the installation of sewage?
No, it's not that. Nor is it the installation of our missing Rembrandt. But
okay. Is it to do with the pox?
It could. Well, you're getting closer.
Okay. Someone is having a course of leeches applied because of an outbreak of the pox.
Well, we might all get the pox as a result of whether this gentleman is going to be successful or not. And the answer is, of course, he's a rat catcher. And
have you got a rat?
Well, I suspect more than one, and I suspect quite a few dead ones, because you'll be very glad that you're not staying in our house at the top of the house where the Australian Californians are, because the house stinks of what I suspect is either decaying rat or rat urine or decomposing rat or something. Few flies in the house. And, this is feeling a little bit like the plague. Yes.
We had a rat.
Want to come round?
No. Oh. We had a rat that got its way into the little porch above our front door. And we were away, and child 2 was in the house on their own, and they heard scratching noises.
Yes.
And if you know, the way that The Exorcist begins is that the child hears, and the next thing it's levitation and spinning heads and vomit.
Yeah.
And then we had to have the whole porch taken apart in order to find said rat, which was not dead. Was very much not dead.
Oh, really? Well, I suspect this one is. And so this morning when I was just going through the script and doing some prep for Richard E. Grant, who's our guest on the show today, we had a smell of rats and there were foxes in the garden. I was thinking, this is just London. You've changed. Just horrendous.
Have you got urban foxes in your garden?
We had 2 this morning. Yeah.
Do they howl?
The worst sound in the world is when they're kind of scared or challenged or something. They sound like a baby is being attacked, and they wail and howl at 3 a.m. And there is so much vermin knocking around these parts. What we need is a cleansing operation, or the hunt. Actually, if there was an Islington hunt, maybe that would sort it all out.
When we were in the New Forest, there was a peacock that would go and nest in a tree, not nest, would go and sit in a tree, and a peacock calling sounds like a child in distress. It goes, help, help, and it would echo across.
It says help, does it?
It does. Honestly, what it sounds like, I'm sure that the top production team could find the sound of a peacock going, help, and it would whistle across the wild and windy moor like the voice of Kathy come home wanting to be let in at the window. It was most distressing.
Wow. It was borderline Monty Python. Bring out your dead, all of that. I'm not dead. Help. Anyway, on the show, assuming I don't pass out from the rat fumes.
Ratness.
There is a rat in our kitchen. What am I going to do? UB40, we're absolutely right. Yes. What are you reviewing later?
Well, I'm going to feast on rat, obviously, later on. We're going to be reviewing the new live-action Masters of the Universe. Didn't know we needed it, but there it is. Nope. There's a new Scary Movie.
Nice.
It's Scary Movie, a.k.a. Scary Movie 6, and also Savage House, which brings us to our particularly special guest.
Yeah, Richard E. Grant. And there's his book on my bookshelf with me. I mean, he's done a number of books, but anyway, that was the first one. You talked to him for that one.
I did, with Nails, yes.
Lots of stories, always, with Richard E. Grant, and he's always a very fine guest. So we'll talk to him. And in take 2...
In take 2, we have a film which brilliantly, the poster gives you a phonetic description of the title. So it is called Erupcja. And we'll be doing that. And also, it literally says on the poster in phonetics, it explains it. And then Bridesmaids is back in cinemas for its 15th anniversary reissue, once again reminding us just how old we all are.
You can get Take Two with no more of our brilliant ads by heading to our Patreon page. We have getting people saying, I'd like to be, patron, I'd like to be Vanguardista, but I still like the ads that you do. Is it possible to have the ads that you do, but not have the ads that are made by other people? To which the answer is no. I don't believe that facility actually exists, but thank you very much for your commitment. So last week on the program, you had a lost ring, discovered ring story.
Here it is. Still here.
So, which has provoked an avalanche of information. Okay. Andy Grinnell, Dear Boromir and Frodo, after hearing Mark's sad, obviously then happy, lost ring story, let me tell you about our story. 11 years ago, my son's first birthday, my wife lost her engagement ring in the gravel park of Chester Zoo when loading the pram. We didn't notice it till later in the day when I managed to find a lovely group of 7 local metal detectorists, who volunteered their time scouring the area for 4.5 hours. Wow. No luck, and then the final twist was that the car park was entirely tarmacked the next day. Sad times ensued. You would have to say that's that, would you not, until the dinosaurs return. So my wife ran a story in the local press just in case it had fallen anywhere else. But nothing. Fast forward 10 years, that's 10 years.
10 years.
And the Duke of Westminster decides to get married, and a local woman in Chester wondered what type of engagement ring the bride had. So she searched it online and found our historic story. I'm not quite sure why the Duke of Westminster in Chester. Anyway, this is how, after all these years, my wife got a phone call to say, I think I have your engagement ring. What? She had found it earlier that fateful day at the zoo and, quotes, knew it was so beautiful it had to have a story behind it, keeping it safe at home, believing one day the owner was destined to find it, which we did. Tarmac be damned. Destiny and kindness can change the world. Also, to make this missive film related, shouldn't Tuna be called Baby Grand Driver?
Very good.
Which kind of works.
That's very good. That's very good.
So someone had found the ring and was keeping it until they found this story. Also, yes. While we're here.
Isn't that a little bit like the Father Ted thing about the money was just resting in my account?
Yes, that is also true. Elton has been in touch. Dear Polycrates and Amasis. This is Elton from Classics Chancel reporting for duty. Last week, as Mark told the charming story of finding his grandfather's signet ring, grandfather's signet ring, something triggered my classicist antenna, whatever that looks like. When he mentioned the folk tale of a woman throwing her engagement ring into the sea only to find it later inside a fish, it brought to mind a famous episode from Herodotus. Polycrates, ruler of Samos, as you know, Mark, in the 530s BC, formed an alliance with the Egyptian pharaoh Amasis II. Concerned by Polycrates' extraordinary good fortune, Amasis urged him to cast away his most treasured possession to avoid divine envy. Polycrates obliged by throwing his signet ring into the sea. Days later, a fisherman presented him with a large fish, and inside it was the ring. On hearing this, Amasis ended their alliance, convinced that such luck foretold a disastrous end, as indeed it did. To be clear, I'm not suggesting any morals for Mark here. This is strictly ancient Greek fatalism at work. You can always rely on the Greeks for a darker worldview. Not it'll be all right, but rather you can't judge a life as happy until it's over. Oh, thanks.
Okay.
I, for one, am looking forward to Nolan's Odyssey, annoying those who think 300 is a documentary. Down with the Nazis, stealing ancient Greek ideas without understanding them. From Elton, from Classicists Chancel.
Fantastic.
Yes, and you know already that we're going to get lots of people writing in after Odyssey saying, can I just say that the swimming technique that they used, again, which was inappropriate, and finally, because we're not done with this yet, Neil says, Professors Enoch and Mungo, Mark half recalls a story about a ring returning to the owner via a fish. Yeah. I think he might be recalling the story of Saint Mungo, the son of Saint Enoch and patron saint of Glasgow. This relates to the fish part of the Glasgow crest, which has a fish and a tree and a bird and a crown and what looks like the Pope at the top or some bishop.
I have a picture of it in front of me.
Okay. This relates to the fish part of the Glasgow crest and the mantra that every Glaswegian kid is taught. The bird that never flew. Mungo restored life to a pet robin that was accidentally killed by classmates. The tree that never grew. He rekindled a dead monastery fire using frozen hazel branches instead of wood. The fish that never swam. He found Queen Langareth's lost wedding ring in the belly of a caught salmon, proving her innocence to the king. And the bell that never rang. He brought a miraculous bell back from a pilgrimage to Rome. Down with Bowser and up, down, left, right, BA for the rest of us. I'm not sure what the BA bit is there.
Yeah, no, it was sounding like Bernie the Bolt before that.
It did.
Up, down, left a bit, right a bit, fire.
Anyway, we do have a peacock sound.
Oh, do we? Oh, fantastic.
So before we hear it, Mark, you do your peacock sound.
Okay, this is what a peacock sounds like when it's calling the help, help.
Okay, and this is a real peacock.
Excuse me?
Excuse you. That's uncannily close to... So you are now a strutting peacock in our eyes, Mark.
I always have been in many ways. But
One
seriously...
of Mark's many impressions actually closer to... You're closer to wildlife than you are humans.
But it does sound like it's saying help. When you said, does it actually say help? That is the word that you hear. Just play that again, Dom. Play it once more.
Help.
It's clearly shouting help.
It is. And a particularly reedy, weedy voice for such a flamboyant, magnificent bird. Anyway,
wow.
There'll be more strutting peacocks when we get to Richard E. Grant later in the show. But before we do that, there is I'm not even slightly interested in this film, unless, of course, you entice me with your words. Tell us more.
Masters of the Universe.
No thanks.
Thank you. No thanks. Media franchise from Mattel first came to the screen, I think the first time. I should point out at the beginning that what I know or indeed care about Masters of the Universe is fairly small. So if I get any of these details wrong, forgive me. I'm a 63-year-old man, all right? I think the first live-action adaptation was the 80s version, which had Frank is he Langella or Langella? Langella as Skeletor and Dolph Lundgren as He-Man. So now we have a reboot, which incidentally features a cameo callback in which the torch is passed to the next generation. This time, we have Nicholas Galitzine as the central He-Man, starring alongside, and get this for the cast, Idris Elba, Camila Mendes, Alison Brie, James Purefoy, Kristen Wiig, and as Skeletor, Jared Leto, or as Skeletor, Jared Leto, if we're going to do the pronunciation game. The funny thing about this was I got a message from Simon Brew, he of Film Stories, saying that he thought that Masters of the Universe was the first Jared Leto-proof movie because it is perfectly possible to watch Masters of the Universe without ever recognizing that it's Jared Leto because he doesn't have his face and his voice doesn't sound like him. So anyway, that's a good thing in saying. So the story starts in Eternia, where sensitive Prince Adam is transported to Earth after an attack by the forces of darkness, and he's transported through a wormhole, holding on to the Sword of Power, which he loses in the process. Cut forward 15 years, Dorky Cheesecake Adam, played by Nicholas Galitzine, is working in human resources in an office, whilst still attempting to find his lost sword, and at the same time simultaneously workshopping, team building exercises. Of what he thinks might be the sword then turns up in a Forbidden Planet style store. If you've ever been to one of the Forbidden Planet things, comics, figures, characters, all that kind of stuff. And so now, once he's found this sword, he is reconnected with the old world of Eternia and must now join forces with the heroes that he left behind to fight Skeletor, Jared Leto, or Skeletor, Jared Leto, and to become the He-Man that his father always wanted him to be, a muscle man in a leather skirt. Here is a clip.
Can you come help me with this? Whoa. It is quite heavy, so if you could just...
Oh my God, yeah. So, how does it feel to be the mighty warrior?
All things considered, I feel pretty great.
Not quite sure what happened to my shirt, though. Where are my pants? Do those come back, or I have to buy a new pair every time?
You're 62, by the way, not 63.
Oh, yeah. Well, I'm about to be 63. But anyway, so look, that's basically the tone of it. You know, so he suddenly turned into He-Man with the thing, and then, oh, where are my trousers? Or pants, as they say. So this film has been a long time coming. There was a sequel was planned to the 1980s film. It was dropped. It was then, the idea was picked up again sometime in 2009. There were multiple iterations of what they were going to do. I think various people were going to star in it. The Nee brothers were announced as, or the Nee brothers were announced as directors and co-writers. Then the rights went to like various, I think Netflix and then Amazon, and then Travis Knight came on board, and then Nicholas Galitzine ended up getting... Anyway, so it's been going on for ages. It's one of those things that just kept turning up in the trade. So now, the final film, as we have it now, credited as directed by Travis Knight, written by Chris Butler, Aaron Nee, Adam Nee, and Dave Callahan, from a story by the Nees, Alex Litvak, and Michael Finch. So Uncle Tom Cobley and all. The tone is essentially playful, colourful, lots of silly costumes, lots of silly characters, brought to life through a mixture of pantomime dress-up and shonky CG. And I should say that the shonkiness of the CG is particularly remarkable considering the massive amount of money that this cost. I mean, it's somewhere between 170 and $200 million. And you go, okay, but it is still pretty ropey. The thing is, the whole tone of the film is so unserious. It's like a kind of camp pantomime that in a way, the shonky CG is sort of like, well, of course the shonky CG is rubbish because the whole thing is, it's a camp pantomime and nobody really cares whether that weird tiger, lion, funny creature looks like it's in the real world or whether it's just completely CG generated. The primary joke of it all is that the central character is a dork who specializes in group therapy and, you know, touchy-feely, all that sort of stuff, but then discovers that he needs to specialize in being a big butch He-Man wearing the leather skirt and smashing things with his sword of power. So he talks like he walked out of a Bill and Ted movie, but he romps around like, you know, Arnold or like Dolph Lundgren. And the gag is the disconnect between the sword and sorcery environment and the dialogue, which sounds like it's out of a different film. And, you know, some of the set pieces are smashy fun. Some of them are bargain basement sub-Star Wars dogfights. Many of them remind you how much better films were when people had to build sets and models rather than do things with CG. I mean, it is essentially a load of colourful nonsense. It's closer in tone to kind of Super Mario than it is to a superhero movie. And it's made with little enough commitment to any form of seriousness that it makes the most recent Wonder Woman movies look like Now Voyager. On the plus side, I do think that Nicholas Galitzine has got dorky charm. And as I said before, and as Simon Brew pointed out, Jared Leto is unrecognizable. And it is perfectly possible to watch the movie and not realize that you're watching a Jared Leto movie, which is why I think Simon used that phrase. On the downside, it's at least 90 minutes too long. I mean, there's no film this flimsy needs to be 140 minutes long. It's just silly. And it's so jam-packed with colourful explosions that nothing ever actually packs a punch. That said, I did laugh a few times. When we were waiting in the foyer beforehand, they were doing, because the soundtrack it's Daniel Pemberton. It's got contributions from Brian May, and then there's the darkness involvement. So, you know, everything is it's just like, let's just throw everything at it. Let's just throw absolutely everything at it. And every sort of 2 or 3 minutes, make a joke about, isn't this ridiculous? I can't find my trousers. That's basically it. It's a lot of money to spend to make that joke. But I think it is the best Jared Leto movie since he got Huey Lewis and the Newsed in American Psycho.
There's a guy called Ed Hyde. I think this was on Blue Sky.
Okay.
Who said, I can't wait to hear what Kermode and Mayo make of this. And he's photoshopped, or he's copied this from X.
Okay.
So where obviously you and I don't go anymore. Yes. But Max from Quebec is on X. And he says, it is with intense sorrow and deep regret that I must report to you that Jared Leto gives his best performance of his career in this movie. So, is Max from Quebec correct? Is that right?
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. As I said, I mean, it really is one of those things in which you could because even the voice doesn't sound sort of Jared Leto-y. I know that we have to say Leto because I know this has been pointed out, but I'm just not going to start doing that. I literally listening to the voice at one point and thinking, who on earth does that sound like? And I realized that he sounds like Jermaine Clement. So it's almost like you're watching an animated skull with the voice of Jermaine Clement, but it turns out to be Jared Leto.
Correspondence at KermodeandMayo.com if you want to join in. Still to come after the break, Scary Movie 6, Savage House with our guest Richard E. Grant. Back in just a moment. Okay, well, if there are any other wildlife sounds that you want Mark to do impressions of, by the way, having heard his uncanny ability to be a peacock, then Mark, because he doesn't do Twitter, but he could do Tweet of the Day, which I think Radio 4 did for a while. Just said, Mark, could you be a starling? Or Mark, could you be a blackbird? All this would be quite fun. Yeah. Just let us know. Correspondence at KermodeandMayo.com. Box office top 10, beginning confusingly at 10, Passenger.
Which I liked. I thought it was a well-told sort of folk horror story. And I've got a thing about cars at night and woodsy setting, so I enjoyed it.
Number 9 here, number 16 in the States is Power Ballad. I got an email here from Stephen.
Great.
Simon and Mark, long-time listener here, first-time caller, Irishman in Lisbon here.
Right.
I've worked years in the music industry. I was listening to your review of Power Ballad and had already seen the trailer. There's something about it that I find troublingly sad.
Okay.
I will keep this brief. The film very clearly appears to tell the true story of how an unknown struggling Irish singer-songwriter, you don't need to mention his name, met a struggling major pop star, don't mention his name either, one evening. Drinks were had, stories were shared, and according to the Irish songwriter's account, he effectively handed over what would become that pop star's biggest ever hit, which I'm not going to mention here. Even mega pop star has laterally acknowledged some truth to this story. Now, there are ins and outs to that story, and we don't need to get into all of them here, but the result was that the pop star became a superstar from the song, while the songwriter never received a credit on the song, but did get a small payment, I believe. Whether people believe that version of events or not, it is hard to deny that it would have a profound effect on someone's life and psyche. Seeing a song you had such a big hand in becomes such a phenomenon. What strikes me now is that not only does the songwriter, who was very young at the time, feel he has lost recognition of the song itself, but it seems that even his story itself has been taken from him and repurposed. It's like he's been robbed twice. When Mark reviewed Michael, he raised the question of how you can make a film without acknowledging the elephant in the room. For me, a similar issue exists here. Regardless of where you stand on the original dispute, surely some acknowledgement by the filmmakers of the songwriter's story should exist. Love the show, Stephen in Lisbon.
Well, I don't know if the filmmakers have ever been asked about that particular story, and I also don't know the ins and outs. I mean, I've heard a version of the story that you're talking about. I actually think that in the case of of Power Ballad, it's a far more general story than that. I mean, clearly there are parallels, but I mean, it's like there are parallels with many stories.
Number 8 here, 11 in America, is the Super Mario Galaxy movie. Number 7 here, 13 in the States, is Tuna. Someone looks as though they're called Dummkopf Crow, bunch of numbers, via our YouTube channel. I quite enjoyed it, not particularly as tightly constructed as the typical crime drama, but the characters here are flawed, very compelling to watch, needed more Dustin Hoffman. If Yuri was more menacing, bad guy, There could have been bigger stakes, but even he had some scruples not to destroy his own operation like crime bosses in other movies. Anyway, I enjoyed it more than Dumb Cop Crow.
Yeah, I think you and I both enjoyed it. I thought the performances were very strong. It was an interesting interview because I thought that Leo Woodall found it quite hard to talk about the film, which is interesting because then having then watched the film, his performance is completely convincing. I mean, he really does convince as that character.
He does. I think it's a good film. Number 6 is The Sheep Detective, still there.
Yeah, charming, lovely, weird, shouldn't work, does work, can't explain why. Strange old world.
Devil Wears Prada 2 at number 5.
Yeah, doesn't work, isn't weird, isn't strange, looks like it was put together on a draft board by a whole bunch of people going, yeah, well, there's that character they like, and there's that character they like, and there's that character. Now give us a narrative that joins them all together. It's not without a certain amount of charm, because when you have that much talent on screen, it's impossible for it not to work, but it isn't any good.
Number 4 here, 2 over there, Obsession.
So there is a long discussion going on at the moment about, are we living in a golden age of horror? And certainly there are a lot of very, very interesting horror movies around at the moment, and we'll get to the biggest one of them at number 1. The thing I like about Obsession is that it is a story which has a supernatural sort of framework to it, but actually it is about something which is very down to earth. It is a story about coercion and a story about control and a story about domestic abuse that is told as a fantasy, I wish, be careful what you wish for, monkey's paw style horror tale. And I thought it was terrific.
Michael is still hanging around at number 3 here, number 4 over there.
Which
number
I thought was
2,
not terrific.
Yeah, no, number 2 here, 3 over there is Star Wars, The Mandalorian and Grogu. Tim, on an email, the biggest indication that the film was a big episode is that it didn't explain the Mandalorian's stakes. There's no explanation of what he's giving up to Father Grogu, but it is kind of about what he's like in terms of how he makes different choices and takes different risks. I think this was dictated into a voicemail. I saw it early in the West End View, and I have to say that of the 6 of us in the room, one bloke behind me snored audibly through the midsection. As a Star Wars film, it had all the themes of the saga, but they were briefly explored in action adventure. The middle bit, where the healing and the bonding happened, was quite different from anything I've seen in Star Wars. So it was a proper Star Wars film to me, but visually a lot of fun and plenty of references for the fans. It's not Empire Strikes Back, but it's arguably more accomplished than Solo. Up with the New Republic and down with the Galactic Empire, says Tim.
I mean, I would draw listeners' attention to the review of Child One, who is a big fan of the series and said, quite rightly, I think that there are things in it that are charming if you like the series, most specifically the puppet work, but it does look like half-hour episodes bolted together. When you read that email out, you said the thing involved to Father Grogu, and I thought, Father Grogu, he's a priest? Oh, no, sorry, father a verb as opposed to father a noun.
Yeah, correct. Yes, absolutely right. And number 1, so here's the thing, number 1 here and number 1 there is Backrooms.
Yes. So this is this huge breakout hit from a feature first-timer who, as we said last week, A21's youngest feature director, either 20 or 21, depending on...
You mean A24?
What did I say?
A21.
Did I say A21?
Yes.
A34, which is the road from Cornwall into London. A21 is the one that goes around the way. A24. Wow, I can't believe that I said that. It's just because he is 20 or 21. That's what my brain was doing. And I thought it was really well done. And I hadn't seen the viral web series beforehand, but I watched the film, and then I saw an interview with him, and then I went back and saw some of the viral web series, and I can see how the two things connect together. But the thing that impressed me the most is if you don't know anything about it, because of the way the narrative is constructed, you're led into it by characters who don't know anything about it. And then I also mentioned last week that there's been a lot of, well, Kane Parsons can't possibly have directed it because that's just not possible because he's 2021. And this is a bit like, to quote that line from Clockwork Orange, it was old age having a go at youth. I saw him interviewed and he sounded like he knew exactly what he was doing. And Backrooms has really become a big hit.
Someone who appears to be called Gilbert Toxic Squall. So, okay. All right, Gilbert. A lot of people are complaining about the script. This is on Backrooms, but that messy writing actually leads to an interesting point. The film ends up connecting with real life in a way that feels even scarier than the movie itself. The Backrooms were born on the internet, which was supposed to be this big utopia where everyone could connect. Yet the ultimate nightmare that came out of it is not nuclear war, aliens, or some giant apocalypse. It is complete isolation in empty corridors that feel like bureaucracy turned into architecture. That says a lot about modern fear. Maybe the scariest thing is not the body dying, but the mind becoming irrelevant. Eternity is not fire and brimstone, it is an office floor with no exit. In that sense, Parsons' film feels less like fiction and more like a very honest documentary with a yellow filter. When a building falls apart, demolition solves the issue. But when the ruin is your own life inside an endless cubicle, who exactly do you call to complain about the old carpet smell? Good luck figuring that out. Okay,
very good.
All right,
that's a good. I like that email very much, and I like the comparison with the onset of the internet. Very good.
And Frankie Ward has sent us an email. Well-known esports gaming and entertainment presenter.
Okay.
And has an interview with Parsons on her YouTube, youtube.com/Frankie Ward. Anyway, hello, No Clip Mark and Backrooms lurker Simon. As anyone who works in gaming. And got to go, as someone who works in gaming and got to go to a preview screening of Backrooms, I thought it might be useful to give a backstory for Backrooms. Director Kane Parsons started creating his soon-to-be viral takes on the Backrooms creepypasta of the teens forum age. Creepypasta, basically an internet horror folklore, catch-all term for horror content on the internet. Apparently it came from 4chan. That's originally where it came from.
Yeah.
And is a version of copypasta, which was copy and paste when you're taking a bunch of text. And anyway.
Oh, that's where that comes from. Okay, I did cite the creepypasta origin in my review.
Right. Thank you. I was just updating it because
thank you,
Frankie.
Yeah.
Makes reference to. The Parsons made his original shorts using open source design software called Blender. And with the 1990s camcorder effect, it's uncanny at the start of the original film. And I think that's also why the film is at its most confident when we're exploring the seemingly limitless backrooms. The film doesn't have enough of a reason for Chiwetel Ejiofor's Clark to be pulled into the backrooms. A flickering light doesn't quite have a feel up the basement and discover a portal through a wall compulsion to it. But once his camcorder is on, his cohorts in tow, the film shows the potential of the world Parsons has built. And I hope he gets to see his 9-episode limited series he's hoped for fulfilled, says Frankie Ward. Frankie, thank you very much.
Thank you. Yeah,
Can I just say, 9 episodes doesn't feel like a limited series. That feels like a very, very long series.
That's right.
Not limited in any way, apart from the fact you can't go to
series.
10. That's all. Single figures only, but yes, you can go to 9. Yeah. Anyway, more discussion on current films in our Overflow car park on Take 2, available via Patreon. More in a moment. So I guess this week needs no introduction. And then whenever that phrase is used, there is then a very long introduction. But I'm genuinely not going to do it this time, okay? Because all you need to know is it's Richard E. Grant. He has a new movie out called Savage House. You'll hear our conversation with Richard after this clip.
Sir. D. A request from the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire. They're to begin their yearly Yorkshire tour, and one of their hosts, Lord Vernon, has apparently succumbed to a grisly bout of the pox.
What is it?
They need a place to dine and sleep in 10 days' time, and are curious if we can accommodate.
No. No.
Yes!
And that is a clip from Savage House. I'm delighted to say that we've been joined by one of its stars. Well, its star, really. Richard E. Grant is with us. Hello, Richard. How are you, sir?
Very good. Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mark.
Nice to see you.
It's a very nice linen shirt you have. Can I just compliment you on that? And whilst we're pointing out things on my bookshelf here, With Nails, the film diaries of Richard E. Grant, which you signed. I think you signed to everybody back in the day as "You Mad Richard E. Grant."
In the last century.
Yes,
Because I'm that old.
Yeah. That's true. Anyway, Richard, very nice to speak to you again. Introduce us to Savage House, and also Sir Chauncey, your character. So just take it away.
It's an 18th century rakes progress man who has enormous appetites and pays the price for that. He marries, he's a Welsh working class upstart who marries into the English aristocracy and leads an utterly debauched life of enormous excess. And as you two boys are old enough to remember Barry Lyndon, it struck me as kind of Barry Lyndon on mescaline.
May I just say, before we go any further, I sent a message to Simon because I'd seen the film before him, and one of the phrases I used was Barry Lyndon with leeches.
That's true.
A little more speed. There are leeches. Yes, indeed. There are leeches because my character suffers from gout. So I have leeches put onto my infected toes.
Your character suffers from gout. Your character also suffers from gangrene. And during the course of the movie, you go from a state of poor health to a state of worse health. It is a movie that festers as you watch.
It does. And you're referring to a scene where just before this dinner that the whole movie is based around the anticipation of Duke and Duchess of Devonshire coming for dinner. I have to have my arm amputated. So it suddenly tips into Monty Python-like mode when limbs are coming off.
Okay, so give us the setup of what's happening with your character, who is coming to visit, and why have they been thrown into completely ecstatic disarray as a result of a letter that they receive?
They receive a letter saying that in the middle of this pox, meltdown, whatever, quarantine, that the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire would like to come and stay in their house for a few days. So they don't really have enough money to afford looking after these aristocrats, but they pawn every last jewel that they have in order to pay for it, do the house up, get the best food and chefs that they can possibly muster. And inevitably, you know what's going to happen. The people who say they're going to come may not come. And in the midst of that, this character, Chauncey's alcoholism and gout and the other thing, stuff happening on his arm. Gangrene sets in after a duel in which he's wounded. So his arm has to be lopped off on the day that the Devonshires are about to arrive and have dinner.
And why is it such a big deal that the Devonshires... Who are the Devonshires? Are they really that important?
I think in this world of... Chauncey is so enamored of trying to pass himself off as an aristocrat and be accepted that he thinks that this is his final chance to... I suppose the equivalent would be, I don't know, if Brad Pitt and his wife wanted to come and have dinner with you and you were living in the middle of nowhere, or the current king and queen said that they were coming to visit you and you lived in, the Outer Hebrides or something. Maybe this would get people excited and willing to sacrifice everything that they have in order to entertain as royally as possible. It's not a documentary, Mr. Kermode.
Now, we should say, Richard, that Chauncey is married to the wonderful Claire Foy, who we've spoken to a number of times on this show. Hello to her dad, who always writes in and says, how about getting my daughter on your show again? But you and Claire Foy clearly not only get on very well in the film, but your characters do love each other and you go like hell for leather into chaos.
Yeah, against all odds, these characters fall in love with each other. She's an aristocrat who marries a lowly Welsh upstart, and because she didn't want to fall into the trap of being an aristocrat's wife and leading a very dull, embroidering away life. So Chauncey is the guy who's full of life and excitement and extreme in excess. So that is what attracts her to him. And luckily, because it's not always the case, the chemistry or connection you have with somebody else in real life, if that translates into a screen partnership, then that's the real bonus of it. And frankly, I never thought that at the ripe age of 67, as I was then, 3 years ago, I would get a lead in a movie. So it felt like a sort of double bonus.
Yeah. And can you explain the kind of the social significance here, Richard? There are a number of references throughout the movie to there's an outbreak of something that's going on. There's a Jacobite uprising, and also there's an eclipse, which we're all waiting for. So what's going on outside of the house?
Well, it's basically the 18th century version of COVID. So everybody's in lockdown. And you'd have to ask Peter Glantz, the writer-director, about the significance of the eclipse. I suppose because they were obsessed with science and discovering the nature of the new world being discovered at that point, the eclipse was an extraordinary event, as it would be now, but I think even more so then, with the invention of telescopes. And what was the third thing you asked me? I'm trying to remember this.
The Jacobite uprising.
The Jacobite uprising, I think, is probably what's going on in America at the moment with Trump dividing the nation, and what is happening here on our own island with people being very divided about the politics, ready to, turn on a hairpin and take to the streets and set things alight. I don't think anything's really changed in that department.
There was a quote from your writer-director who said, "I love period films. They allow us to be a step removed, to look in the mirror and see ourselves and hopefully laugh at ourselves without the preconceived baggage of modern life." And what you're saying is that this is an 18th century story, but it's about today.
Oh, I would never be so portentous as to say that. But
I think you just did,
human
Richard.
nature doesn't really change that much, does it? Greed and social upward mobility, all of those things are rampant. So whether this was set in Wall Street in the 1980s or in the 1780s, I don't think anything really changes except for the way that people dress. And I certainly have a wig that is about 15 feet tall, which I love wearing.
So at one point, Claire Foy says we're going to have the ceilings raised if your wigs get any larger.
Because of this, in that period, the men's clothing was far more flamboyant and peacock-like than anything that the women could come up with. So that was a huge delight to be kitted out in all that stuff.
Did you arrive on set, Richard, flamboyant and shouty, or did you have to be encouraged to dial it up because you are magnificent throughout the film?
Well, thank you very much. That's very generous of you to say so, Simon. There's no way that you can do this part going at it half measure. And mercifully, we'd had rehearsals on the first floor of a pub in North London in advance of starting doing the shoot, which you knew that you couldn't sort of go at it half measure. And the great advantage of wearing these huge wigs, white makeup, beauty spot, ruffled clothes and high heels, and in these actual great historic houses that we filmed in, it sort of gives you the license and the courage to go for it. But when you arrive in your civvies at 5 o'clock in the morning, every single day I did think, how the hell am I going to, try and do this? But you have to take a great leap at it.
And how different is your character to Saltburn, Sir James Caton? Because you do seem to do these roles magnificently well. I just think somehow there's something special with having you playing one of these aristos. And I think are you in Queen of Fashion soon? I think so. There's another one.
I am in Queen of Fashion. Exactly.
Yeah. So what is it that do you particularly enjoy them? What is it? Is it your voice? Is it your manner? Is it your bearing? What is it?
That is for somebody else to decide and to analyze, or casting director. I have no idea. The best way of my answering is that the first screen role that I ever did 40 years ago this summer with Snow and I played such an extreme character that I think that if I'd begun my screen career playing an uptight butler, like in The Remains of the Day, I would have had a completely different career trajectory. But because of that first thing being so extreme and vituperative, I suppose that's inevitably led me in the direction that I've played. But I find it very hard to analyze yourself. It's how other people see you. So, if I'm offered a part like that, I think, oh, great.
May I offer a suggestion? I think that one of the things that is key to this is the quality and the nature of your voice. When I was at Radio 1 in the 1990s, you very kindly recorded a load of interstitials for us for our film review show that we then used for 4 years, because you have a particularly strong voice. And it's interesting because, of course, you grew up in Swaziland. The voice that you have now is a voice that you have worked on and developed. And like Morgan Freeman, or like this voice didn't arrive out of nowhere. You have a remarkable instrument in your voice, and it has fitted particularly well to roles, whether it's Withnell or this. And it is an unusually versatile instrument, I think.
I've never been told that, Mark, and I'm blushing with kind of embarrassment and delight at the same time. Thank you. Nobody has ever said that to me. Thank you.
And just at the mention of Swaziland, before we finish, Richard, I just want to put this on the table again. I have mentioned this to you, but years ago, and this has cropped up in some of your storytelling. Mark mentioned Swaziland. I used to share a room at university with a guy called Bekitemba Gametse, whose father was the last minister of who's the first minister of education in independent Swaziland.
After my
and your
father.
father was the last minister of education in British-run Swaziland, correct?
Yes.
And when you tell the story, tell the story of your father's funeral, and a priest throws himself into the grave to try and raise your father up from the dead, that's Bekitemba Gametse's brother, who is the priest. So this is my unique link to your story, Richard.
That is absolutely extraordinary, and it is totally true. Becky had come back from doing an evangelical course in America, and he was very young and impressionable, and he misguidedly believed that he could raise my father from the dead, jumped into the grave, undid the casket and tried to raise him from the dead. And then he had to be consoled and dragged out of the grave because my father, weighing 69 pounds, dying of lung cancer, lay inert.
Yes. He taught me some, is it Siswati, I think the language? I can still say Lalagahi Magine Baba, which I think is good night, mother and father. Would that be right?
It is Lalagashi. Thank you.
Okay.
And might I take this opportunity to say to any listeners enjoying this, if you haven't seen Wawa, do, because that's a really, really interesting evocation of that particular period that Richard is responsible for, and is, I think, one of the films that you made that gets overlooked.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. And Richard, are you on stage next? Is it Hay Fever in the West End?
I am, with Christine Baranski. Noel Coward's Hay Fever. It starts in September.
When was the last time you were on stage in the West End?
I did My Fair Lady at the Chicago Opera House in 2017.
Okay.
Playing Henry Higgins.
So if you're going to go and see Hay Fever, Noel Coward's Hay Fever, turn your phone off. Otherwise, there'll be hell to pay. You know how to behave. Richard E. Grant, always a great pleasure. Savage House is his new movie. Richard, thank you so much for your time this morning.
Thank you, Simon. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you.
He has a great smile, doesn't he? Not only is he a great actor with a wonderful voice, as you pointed out, but also when he grins, you're thinking, okay, a little bit of sunshine in your life.
Also,
Richard
magnificent hair. Magnificent hair.
That is true. And when you look at the old photographs of him, because I've got one here for the With Nails, his hair is kind of exact. I mean, it's got more grey, but it's all there. Look at that. That's amazing.
It's a full head of hair.
He looks great. He's always very watchable. Tell us what you think about Savage House.
Well, so just to recap, because I mean, obviously we've just explained it, but just to recap for the purposes of the review. So this is Savage House is a British black comedy period drama from Peter Glancy, the writer-director, who previously did The Longest Week in 2014 and went on to be one of the co-writers on Captain America: Brave New World. So the best way to describe this is it kind of comes on like and I know this because I had written this to you because I'd seen the film before you had, and you said vaguely, what's it like? I said, it's like a cross between The Draftsman's Contract, The Young Poisoner's Handbook, The Favourite, The Crown, and Saltburn. And it also, as the thing that I cited, it's a bit Barry Lyndon with leeches, which is a phrase that I used in that interview, but I liked it. So it's set in 18th century England. I think it's 1715, time of Jacobite unrest, outbreaks of the pox, as you said. And Richard E. Grant is the hideously bewigged and slowly festering, as he said in the interview. He's quite revealing in the interview because he literally told you what happens. Sir Chauncey Savage, who is a chancer who's married. Is he Chauncey or Chauncey? Chauncey.
He's Chauncey.
Chauncey. He's married now Lady Savage, thus acquiring her wealth without ever being able to shed his own humble beginnings. And we see sort of flashbacks to him as a boy from very humble beginnings. And he keeps having these visions of pigs everywhere. And he longs to be taken seriously by posh society. But he lives in this mansion that is crumbling, and his finances are crumbling, and his body is, everything's like the fall of the House of Usher. And then this note arrives saying that this couple, who you said yourself, it's the Duke and Duchess of Devonshire, right?
Yes.
Why is that such a big deal? Why is that such a big deal? And as Richard E. Grant said in that interview, well, just because he just wants any social uppage that he can get. They say they're going to come and stay. Can they be accommodated? And so his entire life and the life of the whole household falls into disarray as they attempt to prepare for the staying and the feasting of this couple who they consider to be so high up the social ladder that they will do anything. And in preparing for it, and it's very much like we know from the beginning, it's going to be like waiting for Godot. They are just ruining their lives even further. Claire Foy's character is having to sell all the jewelry that she's been hanging on to. You also made an interesting point that the funny thing is that the couple at the center of it, the couple played by Claire Foy and Richard E. Grant, both of whom, incidentally, I could read the phone book, but yes, both of whom I think are having an absolute riot doing this. Weirdly, despite the fact that everything is falling apart and everything is crumbling and everything is rotting from the inside, and they're all fornicating with others, they sort of do love each other in a really kind of bizarre way. There is this relationship at the heart of it. Claire Foy's character keeps saying, he didn't lead me in and so I chose him because he was exciting and different and weird, and that's what I wanted. He was my choice. But as I said, everything is falling apart. There is also this weird Barry Lyndon thing going on. So the cinematographer is Adriana Goldman, and there are certain shots, particularly the dueling scene, in which it's the landscape, the mist. But it's almost like someone has taken the aesthetic of Barry Lyndon, drained all the life color out of it, and replaced it with a kind of pestilence, a sort of, pustules and darkness and grey. And there is, as we mentioned in the thing, there is gangrene. There is there are full chamber pots. There are entire piles of poo. There is an awful lot of handsomely heeled shoes stepping into steaming piles of poo, and there's lots of inflamed spots. And the interesting thing about it is that all of this kind of matches the dyspepsia of the drama, or the comedy. I mean, I wrote this down as again, there are yucks as in comedy yucks, and there are yucks as in ugh, that's gangrene and poo. I mentioned that thing in the interview about the writer-director saying, I like period films because it means that you can look at and laugh at yourself while feeling disconnected. And Richard E. Grant in that interview said this thing about, well, it is very much like when you asked about the Jacobite thing, and he said, well, it's like Trump's America, isn't it? And then when I said to him, so what you're saying is that it's a period film, but it's actually about today. And then he said, well, I wouldn't possibly say that. Richard, I think you did just say that. The tagline for the film is, polite society has never been so savage, which pretty much lays out the bill of fare, which is these people are, well, from the very thing about the name, that the savage house, and there is a savagery at the heart of this social climbing. It's a little bit like Grand Bouffe meets Waiting for Godot. It's the kind of well, in that particular case, you'd be like the bourgeois satire, the thing about these people who are desperately trying to crawl their way up the social ladder, and they will do it even if it involves cutting off their own arm in order to impress visiting, not even royalty, just visiting poshos who may or may not actually turn up. So the thing that I enjoyed most about it was how much I thought that Richard E. Grant and Claire Foy were having a ball.
Yes.
And I've had this rule in the past, which is the more people enjoy themselves on set, the less you enjoy watching it. This isn't the case here. I do think Richard E. Grant has got a tremendous voice and a tremendous screen presence. It was interesting that he himself raised Withnail in that interview, and there is something of that grandiloquence, that pompous peacocking, that incredible sense of unearned self-esteem. But there is also, all the way through this, I mean, actually, it is true of Withnail and I, because they are living a pestilent existence. There's that thing when the heating goes off and he covers himself from head to foot in deep heat in order to warm himself up. So I can see exactly why Richard E. Grant loved doing it. I think it's really important to say that if Claire Foy wasn't as good as she is, the thing wouldn't work, because through her, his ridiculousness is kind of mediated because the thing that the drama has going for it is that in a weird way, despite everything about him that is rancid, she loves him. And because she loves him, you sort of love him too. Even, but I mean, I don't mean you don't actually love him, but you tolerate the pomposity, the ridiculousness, the bewigness, the powder, the powder and the beauty spot that looks like you're literally sticking on a bit of the Black Death onto the side of your. I mean, it's a fetid film, isn't it?
Oh yeah. And if you tolerate this, then obviously your children
will be next.
We should mention the lower classes, led very well by Belle Powley and is it Belle Powley? I think it's Powley.
Is it okay?
And Jack Farthing. Anyway, I thought so they're downstairs. Well, Richard and Claire are upstairs. Just occasionally, because Claire's doing her posh voice, I think it's the Queen. You are married to the Queen, and the Queen should have more jewelry than this. But anyway, it was good. It was good fun. Always nice to speak to Richard E. Grant. If you see it, let us know what you think. Correspondence at kermode@mayo.com. Before we get to Mark's hotly anticipated review of Scary Movie 6, quick reminder, you can get Take 1 and Take 2 ad-free, plus our bonus Take Ultra every fortnight, plus access to the Wittertainment community if you go via Patreon. That's the thing you have to remember. And now we step with how would Richard E. Grant do? It wouldn't be gay abandon, but he with
triumphant fabulousness,
with an air of fetid disgust. Fetid, fecund disgust. Into the laughter lift. Here we go. Yeah.
Right.
Hey, Mark, I love karaoke.
I do.
Can't get enough of it. Well, the unthinkable happened at the weekend. I was in Showbiz North London's top karaoke night spot, the Acoustic Larder, on Saturday, and after unsuccessfully attempting the intro to Danger Zone from Top Gun 4 or 5 times, they kicked me out. Apparently, I'd exceeded the maximum number of logins attempts.
Hey!
So to cheer myself up
Very
the next
good.
day, I went to the pet shop, the Companion Atelier. Psst, said the owner. Do you want to buy a talking centipede? Well, who doesn't? So I slapped a tenner down on the counter and took the little fella home. A bit later, I said, hey, centipede, do you want to pop to the artisanal pub, the Fermentation Project, for a pint? There's no answer. Oi, excuse me, I said, do you want to come to the pub with me, little fella? Still nothing. So I upped the volume. Mr. Centipede, do you want to come to the pub? Then came from the tiny little box a voice. I heard you the first time. I'm just putting my shoes on. Centipede.
Yes.
100.
Very long walk. A very long walk. Up the
For a
golden
centipede.
path.
Incredibly
For a
long.
centipede. Yay!
Still to come, Mark's review of Scary Movie 6 plus any What's On business in just a moment. Now, the Muppet game has really caught fire. I mentioned it a few weeks ago, and everybody wants to cast films where you replace everyone with Muppets, but you keep one central character.
Yeah.
Nicola T. In Bruges with the Muppets, please. Ray, Colin Farrell. We'll keep him. Okay. Ken, Fozzie Bear, Chloe, Miss Piggy, Harry, played by Animal, Canadian guy and partner, Statler and Waldorf. Animal chasing Ray through the nooks and crannies would be amazing. Mark Pipkin, Dear Statler and Waldorf, long-term listener, etc. The film that immediately came to mind for the Muppet Game was Whiplash. J.K. Simmons playing the ruthless Terence Fletcher as the only non-Muppet cast member, and Animal playing Miles Teller's character, Andrew Nyman. And the fact that he's already an accomplished drummer means that he can avoid the usual months of preparation for such a role. Whilst there are not many other major characters in the film, Miss Piggy would be excellent as the girlfriend who Andrew discards to concentrate on his music. With Kermit a good fit for his supportive father, the other music students can be played by members of the Electric Mayhem, Dr. Teeth et al., with Fozzie, Gonzo and other Muppets filling out the numbers for the band scene. There's loads of these. We'll do some more. Do you want one more? No, should we get? Yeah. Let's do one more.
Yeah, go on, one more.
Okay. Florian. I couldn't believe how attuned I was with Simon on his second spontaneous reaction, that is to say, Wuthering Heights. When I watched it 2 months ago, very early on in the screening, I thought Margot Robbie's Kathy, with all her spoilt brat petulance, reminded me so much of Miss Piggy. I simply could not get it out of my head for this is going to actually spoil the movie if you go and see it again. Not even the weird, fleshy bedroom scene. I was still thinking of the Muppets. Henceforth, all attempts at conveying any sense of tragedy or gothic obsession were undermined, and I found the flawed movie simply hilarious. Tiggity-tonk, down with the Nazis. Hello to Jason Isaacs. Muppets do Peter Pan and he's Hook. How about that? Yours loyally, Florian. Correspondence at kermode.com. Let's get to the business in hand, which says Scary Movie 6.
Although actually Scary Movie. I mean, it is the sixth one, but it's called Scary Movie. Back at the Scary Movie franchise has grossed nearly $1 billion worldwide. The first two Scary Movie movies were directed by Keenan Ivory Wayans, co-written by Sean and Marlon Wayans. The first one cost $19 million, took $278 million. The second one cost $45, took $191. Then the Wayanses left or ousted from the franchise, and Airplane director David Zucker took over for 3 and 4. Scary Movie 3 and 4, which were co-written by...
Well, not Jack Thorne, because that's not his.
The other one.
It must be Craig Mazin.
Craig Mazin.
Okay.
It's becoming ridiculous, isn't it? I think he wrote my phone book. Anyway, so the new film, Scary Movie 6, is the first time the Wayans have been back there since Scary Movie 2, and it is described as, quote, the spiritual sequel to the first two films. Sequel to the first two Scary Movies, meaning practically that there are entire generations of Wayans involved in the credits. And the action also includes a lot of jokes about the Wayans being pushed out of the franchise, and then some of the actors in the franchise continuing to work in the franchise despite the fact that they should have jumped ship because the Wayans weren't there. And there's also a very, very unfunny, long-running joke, which I'm setting up because it's in the clip, about a character being called Tuesday as opposed to Wednesday for contractual reasons. Here's a clip.
We back.
There's a serial killer on the loose.
Hello, Tuesday.
I had been preparing for this for years. Hello, Mother. You look like...
Should we hug?
I really want to, but I'm a Republican now, so I'm supposed to be racist.
Oh, girl, I think all white people are racist anyway. Come here.
Okay. Oh.
Okay, so this, I suppose, reboot is what it is. It's directed by Michael, I think it's Tiddes, Tiddes, written by Marlon Wayans, Sean Wayans, Keenan Ivory Wayans, Craig Wayans, and Rick Alvarez. Marlon, Sean, other returning actors, Anna Faris, Regina Hall, a whole bunch of people. Essentially, group of friends are friends and frenemies reunited because the masked killer from way back, Ghostface, is back again. So the film opens with a cameo from Tiana Taylor making a one battle after another joke about Pussy Don't Pop, which is a joke that refers back to a film that was fairly recent, but all that stuff has already been and gone because we did a whole bunch of stuff about it, and then it won, best film and blah, 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 and things. So, but because obviously it's in the nature of films, if you're making a joke about a film that's that recent, it's going to immediately be out of date. So it opens with a joke that's out of date about a film that is nothing to do with horror that was the talk of the town last year. It ends with a joke in the credit sequence about a little-handed killer, which kind of combines a previous callback character with what I think is a joke about long legs, but I wasn't entirely convinced. And then in between, we get all the stuff we had before. So the jokes about the rules of horror movies. So the whole thing is, it was Scream, and then there was Scary Movie was the parody of Scream. So about the rules of horror movies are stupid. And the jokes about how formulaic the nature of sequels and reboots is. And the jokes about how stupid the whole thing is. Oh, and also, incidentally, a joke about White Chicks. White Chicks, the film.
Okay.
Which wasn't funny the first time round. We also get the jokes about the character who's gay but says he isn't gay. We get a character who's trans. We get a character who's got a small Mr. Happy. We get a lot of humorless stuff about wokeism, which feels out of date. We get a bunch of stuff about ICE, which bizarrely feels out of date. We get some stuff about horror movies not winning Oscars, which is like, just feels like, yeah, and here's the essential problem. The main problem with the Scary Movie movies is this. They began life as a parody of Scream, which is itself a parody of horror movies. It is Scream is a smart, cine-literate parody of horror movies from a director who knows the genre inside out. Now, there's a program that I do on Radio 4 with Ellen E. Jones, and we did an episode not so long ago about parodies. And Ellen interviewed Keenan Ivory Wayans, and he said he didn't like horror movies at all. Wasn't particularly interested in horror movies. And that is the problem. Because the best parodies are generated by people that love the source material. You think about Mel Brooks doing Young Frankenstein, or doing Westerns in Blazing Saddles, or doing Hitchcockian chillers in High Anxiety. Or you think about the Zucker brothers doing Airplane, which actually began life as a serious film, because Airplane is technically a remake of, I think it's called 0 Hour, and they took the script of 0 Hour and then put jokes into it. And then, weirdly, when David Zucker then took over the Scary Movie movies, they weren't good, because I don't think he likes horror movies either. As far as the Wayans stuff is concerned, if you go back to things like Hollywood Shuffle and I'm Going to Get You Sucker, all the best gags in the new Scary Movie, which incidentally, I think you could argue is the best film in the series, although that's not a recommendation. All the best gags in it are from that previous era when you had things like I'm Going to Get You Sucker, in which they were jokes about, racism and stereotypes and white liberalism, and that joke that we heard in the bit from the trailer, oh, yeah, it's okay, I don't mind you're Republican, I think all white people are racist. That stuff is the funniest stuff in the film. The problem is that stuff is completely unconnected to the horror stuff, although one could argue that at the very beginning of Scary Movie, there was the Scary Movie series, there was the joke about what happens to black people in horror movies is that they're always the first victims. But that isn't true. And it particularly isn't true if you're making a film which has got jokes about Get Out and has got jokes about Nope. So those jokes aren't, then they're not landing anymore, because the thing that they're laughing at is not true. So I didn't laugh. I could see how several of the broader gags could play perfectly decently to a Friday night audience, but they're nothing to do with being gags about horror movies. And that is a problem for an ongoing horror spoof series. Wes Craven said, and I interviewed Wes many times, that when he saw the first Scary Movie, his response was, wow, this town moves fast. I think that this 6th installment in the Scary Movie series proves that it just doesn't move fast enough. And incidentally, the Scream sequels let Scream down really badly. So it's not like there's a moral high ground here. It's not like the Scream series is up here and the Scary Movie series down here. Right now, they're all just sort of swilling around in the same slop. And particularly when you're in a box office top 10 in which you've got things like Backrooms, in which you've got things like Obsession, this just all feels like it's very, very tired and old. And there are some crowd-pleasing gags that are in there that are Wayans Brothers gags, and they're nothing to do with horror. And it's just having to bolt them around the horror references is just tedious. It's a comedy. I didn't laugh. I can see that some people will. As I said, I think it's probably, arguably, the best in the series, and it's rubbish.
Will it be number one?
Well, it'll have to dislodge Backrooms, and that's an interesting scenario. But I think it'll open strongly because it's, you know, it's crowd pleasing stuff in the lowest possible common denominator way.
Correspondence at kermode.com if you see it and you would like to pass on some information, which is also where you can send your voice notes and videos to tell us anything that is on around you or you're responsible for, which is cinematic or cinema adjacent. For example, Sam from the Sherborne Festival.
Hello, Mark. Hello, Simon. On Sunday, the 7th of June at 6 o'clock, the Sherborne Cinema in Gloucester, a local bastion of independent film culture, is hosting a very special evening of short documentaries with the Strand Film Festival. Continuing its 10-year anniversary celebrations, expect vivid, humane, properly cinematic storytelling exploring community, time and resilience. From reimagined folk traditions to immersive family portraits and 7 years of social change captured on 60mm, thoughtful, big-hearted filmmaking with a Q&A. Tickets available via the Sherborne website.
Sam, thank you. Sherborne Festival news. And also, before we're done, here's Derek.
Greetings, my name is Derek Anthony Williams. I run Join the Night Shift Goth events. I'm running a 2-day festival here in Doncaster at the Unitarian Church on the 20th and 21st of June. We are hoping to raise lots of money also by doing it for trans rights, as I feel very much recently trans people have become very much the focus of a lot of negative attention. We have a heck of a lot of music over 2 days here. 50% of all donations go to the Mermaids charity, no matter what.
Okay, so Derek, thank you very much indeed. So jointhenightshift.co.uk, I imagine that must be for more information. And we would like to see your videos and we'd like to hear your audio. If there's something that you'd like to tell us about, send it to correspondence@kermode.com. That's it for this week. This has been a Sony Music Entertainment production. And this week's team, Jen, Eric, Josh and Scarlett. The producer was Dom and the redactor was Simon Poole, who is briefly back in the country. How nice of him to grace us with his presence. Take 2, we're heading from big screen eruptions in Bridesmaids via a hotly contested 5-question film club on the Goonies, and even more topical movie discussion in the Overflow car park. Plus, questions, schmestions. We'll be tackling whether YouTuber movies have finally shaken off their bad reputation, and a question on BBFC ratings. Why 12A and 15, and could those classifications actually change in the future? Come and join us on Patreon, because it's a lot of good fun. Mark, what is your film of the week?
Savage House.
Back next week with reviews of Solo Mio, The Fall of Sir Douglas Weatherford, and Disclosure Day with our special guests Emily Blunt and Coleman Domingo from the new Spielberg movie. Thank you very much indeed for listening. I will bestow a year's Ultra membership to our correspondent of the week, which, why don't we give it to Elton in the classics chancel, who told us about Greek fatalism, because it was something I didn't know about. So,
very good.
Elton, thank you very much indeed. We'll be back with you in a few days' time, and take 2 has landed alongside to this one.